Hey, Monique, are you ready to go in the hot seat?
Yes.
On today's episode, I am so excited for an in-depth conversation with my friend and co-host, Monique Forcier, where we're going to learn about where this all began, who is Monique Forcier, what made you who you are today. Welcome to Heart and Soul, the podcast where we empower and inspire women to lead their best lives, harnessing the power of their hearts and souls. We are Mariah
And Monique.
your hosts and guides on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth.
In each episode, we will dive deep into topics that matter most to you, from self-love and confidence to career development, relationships, and everything in between. We believe that every woman has a unique strength and inner wisdom waiting to be unleashed.
Join us as we cover insightful heart and soul-centered topics and interview incredible women who've overcome challenges, chased their dreams, and found their true purpose. Through all of this, you will discover practical tips, strategies, and real-life stories to help you navigate life's twists and turns.
For whatever season of life you're in, this podcast is your safe space to explore, learn, grow, and possibly even laugh and cry with us. So grab your headphones, maybe your favorite drink, and we'll embark on this transformative journey together.
With heart, I'm Mariah.
And with soul, I'm Monique.
So go way, way back. I want to hear all about the day you were born and just keep going from there.
I don't remember the day I was born. So we're just going to move around. But I was born February 20th. Coming up soon.
Birthday
Because,
coming.
1973. I was born outside of Chicago, Illinois, and Hammond, Indiana.
Okay. I didn't know you were born in Indiana.
I was born in Indiana, I know. So my mom is an immigrant from Argentina. She came to the United States when she was 4 years old with my grandmother, her father. Actually, her father had come about a year or so before and saved up money to bring his family. And then her half-siblings, who are older than her brother and sister, her half-brother and sister, they moved to outside of Chicago. There was a big Argentinian community. They moved there when my mother was 4, as I said, and then shortly thereafter, they got a divorce. Anyways, long story, my grandparents, long story short, that's why outside of Chicago, because
That makes sense.
yes,
The Argentinian community.
my mother also grew up there. And coincidentally, my father was a pastor's kids. So,
Okay.
yep, they had moved all over the United States because in the Salvation Army, they would move you every couple years. You'd be a pastor here, and then you have a new mission, and you'd go over here. So, when my parents met, his parents were pastors of a church, like I think it might have been Gary, Indiana.
Okay.
And my mom was in Hammond, Indiana, and the stars aligned, and bada bing, bada boom.
And now we have Monique.
Right.
Amazing gift from the universe.
Aw. Yes. So outside of Chicago is where I was born. My father was a welder by trade, and having a family, they wanted to move to Duluth, Minnesota, better area to raise a daughter. So I was 18 months old when we moved here. And my sister then, I have one sibling, my sister, she is 2.5 years younger than me. She was born in Duluth. And so I was raised in Duluth, but I don't know a lot of people from this area because when I was a couple years old, my mom got us into a religion called Seventh-day Adventism.
Okay.
It is a smaller organization. There's a couple, it's it's Christian based. So we believe in Jesus, all of that. But there's a couple distinctions between Seventh-day Adventists and like Catholics or Baptists or whatever. So the first one is we would go to church on Saturday versus Sunday. We also were raised not eating certain meats.
Okay.
We would observe the Sabbath from sundown on Friday night until sundown on Saturday night. We wouldn't work. We would just like meet with in community with people. Um, I also went to church school for this church. So up until I believe I was in seventh grade, I had two people in my class. Yes,
Really?
very, very small.
So your formative early schooling experience was very small.
Very small. Yes,
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know
yes,
that about you.
yes. So, so I went to church school, and my sister then also went to church school. And, anyways, a part of there was a couple schools here and there, but for the most part, I went to church school. And when we went to church school, we would worship, and we were like in church, like,
All the time.
6 days a week.
Yeah.
So I was very, religion, and especially Seventh day Adventism and Christianity, was a very big cornerstone of my life. That said, though, my parents, my father wasn't a Seventh day Adventist because his parents were Salvation Army.
Right.
So there was he wouldn't go to church with us on Saturday. Not that he didn't believe, but there was just that difference.
Yeah.
Me and my
That's
sister
what
and my
ways of
mother, or
practicing.
yes, my sister and my mother and I would go to church on Saturday, and he would observe how he would observe. So, raised in Duluth, very small kind of community, very I would say I was sheltered.
Okay.
Going and only having two people in my class, how could I not
Yeah.
be, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I remember being young and thinking like, "Well, I'm never gonna get a boyfriend because I've known these boys since I was like 5 years old," you
Yeah, your
know?
options are pretty limited.
Exactly. So yeah, that was kind of my upbringing. My sister and I were very close. Um, we had little puppies, and it was a good upbringing. We moved quite a bit. My dad would get jobs as a welder and then either be transferred because welding was really heavily dependent on the manufacturing of iron ore in the area that we're from, and
Yeah.
mines would close and open, so that was a little bit more challenging. But fairly good upbringing, and but when I was around, I want to say maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, I lose track of time, my parents did end up getting a divorce.
Okay.
So still in the church, but then we ended up still going to church school. That was a really big time in my life, right? So my parents had raised me. The falling apart of their marriage was really difficult. I'm the oldest. My sister is younger. And so I felt the weight of it a
Yeah.
lot. As just I don't know, all kids do, but for me,
Sure.
it felt very challenging. So, that meant a lot of moving around within Duluth as well, because housing, as you know, when your parents get divorced, couldn't afford to live where we lived. We were living with neighbors for a while. My mom and my sister and I were sort of homeless until my mom could get a job and buy us a house then. So that was a really challenging time.
Wow.
Yeah, just having my parents split up, having not living with my father anymore, and then also coincide, right after that, then not having a place to live. And it was just a lot of
Trauma.
trauma, transition, challenges
Yeah.
for a young person. So that said, once my mom bought us a house, it was much more stable.
Sure.
She was able to afford it on her own. She had a job, and things then started kind of like turning around for us. Then my mom, a couple years, not long after we moved into the house, but a couple years after her divorce, she had a roommate move in. Someone I had known, I think, my whole life. Her name is Lisa, and she moved in to from Texas to just kind of like get herself together. And my mom and her were very close best friends. Not long after moving in, my mom reveals to my sister and I that her and Lisa are in a romantic relationship. Now, this is kind of a big deal.
It's big news.
Yes, because it is not condoned by the church in which we are so living our lives in and intertwined with. And also, it just made it really tricky. But it was also in the early '80s when AIDS,
Yeah.
or maybe mid '80s, AIDS had just come onto the scene, and AIDS was directly correlated at that time to people who were gay or lesbian.
Yeah.
And so it really landed its own sets of issues. And so we would just kind of keep this on the down
Sure.
low to ourselves. At the same time as well, my father had a mental health issue and moved away from town. So not only do I learn that, my mom is, in a romantic relationship with another woman and it's a lot of change. My dad vacates because he has this mental health issue b- my life until I'm about 18 years old. And so a lot of change. Now, luckily, with my dad leaving, Lisa, is in the picture and is extremely stable person. Once she kind of like turns herself around and is a positive influence in my life, very loving, very kind to me. So that was nice. Yeah. So just a lot of interesting intertwining things going on.
Yeah.
So, went to boarding school for the church, and we just kind of kept the whole in the relationship with my mom and Lisa on the down low, because Lisa was also raised in the Seventh Adventist religion, so she would go to church with us, and we would just go, and it was great. Now, the religion that the church that I was raised in, Seventh Day Adventist, they have schools, and at that point, the school that I went to only went until like middle school.
Okay.
And when you were in high school, you would go to boarding school. So around the state, all of these schools where these kids would go, once they would get to high school, would go to boarding school and live.
Wow. That's
Yes.
a big transition.
Yes, it was a huge transition. And I think though more so because I only mom and I weren't getting along very well, and I think I was, probably giving her a hard time. And I think we just decided it was the best thing
Sure.
for me to go to the boarding school. So I went there, and it was very challenging to go to this boarding school. I just living with other people, living with other girls in a dorm, having a dorm mom. I mean, we didn't get to watch TV. I don't know. Just, sometimes you eat cafeteria food, you don't eat
Yeah.
home cooked meals. It was just a lot of changes. I think I knew two kids at the school, one of which was a boy from,
Yeah.
the grade before me at the church school I went to. So it was a lot of changes. And I experienced just troubles, right? Like
Yeah.
being picked on by girls, and you know, is an eye opener. Let's put
Sure.
it that way. So about 6 months at being at the boarding school, I met my ex-husband. He was a year ahead of me, and he had been going to the boarding school for a while. And we met, and we fell in puppy love.
Puppy love.
Yes. Yes. So at 16, 17 years old, we met.
Yeah.
Because it was a year ahead of me, I didn't want to go back for year
Sure.
two for 11th and 12th grade. But he asked me to stay for his senior year so that we could be together. And because we're so in love.
You're willing to do it.
I decided to stay for my junior year and didn't go back for my senior year. But instead of graduating from high school, my senior year, what did happen is I had my oldest son.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I had my son Blake in December of my senior year. Didn't go to school. I ended up just going and getting my GED. And he is a wonderful gift, but it was a lot to be a mom at 18 years old and not even like, be done with high school. It was a lot. Um, that said, we we did the best we could. We went to school down in the cities. My ex-husband was going he would switch, as most young people do, he would switch quite a bit what his major was going to be. I think he was going to be a cop, and then he went for chiropractor. So
Oh my goodness, lots of
lots of different things.
Okay.
Yes. So I knew I've got this like little baby. I've got to go to school. I can't, I got to get like some sort of trade certificate. So I ended up going to, for 6 months to dental assisting school. And the school normally would take you a couple of years, but I had an accelerated program so I could get done and get a job.
Wow.
So I did this accelerated program all the while having this 6-month-old living with, my ex-husband and his sister and her 2 kids and working full-time, going to school full-time. It was a lot, but got it done. I got a job right out of dental assisting school in Duluth. So I moved from the town where I went to college, and then I moved back to my hometown. And because my mom was living there and I needed some help having a little baby, I was 19 years old,
Oh my
got this
goodness.
job, got daycare for my baby, and was working. My ex-husband also came and was continuing to go to school and working. So we were just sort of like building the starting of our life. But it was on again, off again for a little while, until we decided to eventually get married. I
Okay.
think we were 21 years old. I mean, we were so old.
So old. The rightful age of 21.
No, but we did have a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, I think about 21-year-olds so young, but so we decided to get married and start really building our life together. He had landed on chiropractic, and we moved 2.5 hours away where they had a chiropractor school. And I was working a job as a dental assistant, and he was going full-time to chiropractic school, and my son was in daycare while I worked full-time. So that was a really interesting time of life. He was going to school full-time, I was working full-time, and my son was in daycare. It was really hard, right? During that time, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be a chiropractor forever.
Well, that's a big investment of time and
resources.
And resources
Yes.
if you're not sure you want to do that. Yeah, that's tough.
Right. Also, my oldest son was getting a little bit older, and so I was like, "Oh, I want to have another kid."
Oh, that's just what you needed. Another baby.
I mean, I'm getting so old. I'm like 23.
Time for another baby.
Yep. So I had another baby. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
My son
geez.
Cole was born.
Okay.
And I think that was probably one of the nails in the coffin for I'm not going back to this chiropractic school. I got to make some money.
Yeah. So that kind of
Yes.
changed that trajectory.
Yes. And I don't think it was Cole. I really think he just he couldn't see himself seeing patients every
Sure.
day. So we moved back to hometown Duluth. He found a job working full-time. And I found a job teaching dental assisting.
Oh, I didn't
At
know that.
yep, I taught dental assisting for nights. So
Okay.
he would work all day. I would work and teach dental assisting at night. Because at that point, I think I was like 24, 25 years old, and I'd been doing dental assisting for like 7 years.
You were
'Cause I
the
started-
expert.
I know, I was like ready to retire because I was just so they're like, "You want to teach? Sure, I'm 25. Why not?"
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. So anyways, yeah, so he was working, my ex-husband, I was working as a dental assistant, and accidentally I got pregnant again. I know. You'd think I'd know how to
You'd think
stop
you'd
that
figure
by
that
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my youngest son Dylan was born. And that was another big turning point because they stopped the dental assisting program. So I've got these 3 kids,
Oh no.
you know? One, I think my oldest son by that time was in school, but I've got these 3 kids, and if they had to be in daycare, there's no way I could afford it.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So working a job as a dental assistant during the day wouldn't make any sense. So my ex-husband says, I think you should start a cleaning business. I had always cleaned at houses
Okay.
as like a high schooler. And him and I in college down when we lived in a bigger city had worked doing cleaning. He also had some ties in his job that he was working into doing cleaning. So he's like, I think you should start this. You could work. We could have somebody work the weekends. You could work, during the week, and you could have a job and you could work it at night and have the days to be with the kids. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know about running a business,
Yeah.
but it's just me and another person. I think, we can make this work. So at 26 years old with 3 kids, started a business.
Oh, girl. There's no doubt why you can hustle.
Right. I
Had
had to
to.
hustle. So that said, yeah, just started kind of like growing the business very slowly to not only what I could clean or what my one other employee could clean, to just kind of what easily, naturally evolved and landed in my lap. And all the while kind of like raising kids, moving between houses, remodeling houses. Yeah. So for years, just kind of like slowly building that business up. Meanwhile, my ex-husband rose in his position to vice president of a couple real estate firms, president of real estate firms. So yeah, it was a good business. During that time, I also had purchased some ladies only health clubs on the range, ran those for a couple of years, ended up selling them off individually. I had bought um, a rental. I had a rental. Yeah, so a
You
lot of
realized
stuff.
pretty quickly that you actually liked being in business, or
Yeah.
at least you couldn't stop being in
Right.
business.
Yeah, so it's almost like when I was 26, I was like, "No, I don't wanna do this." Like, why would I start a business? Kinda like drug my feet. I remember when he's like, "You need to invoice these people." I'm like, "Why do I need to invoice them? They know how much they need to pay me." To like, "Oh my gosh, I love the books. I love doing that stuff. I get it. I know I self-taught like QuickBooks and blah blah blah."
Yeah.
To okay, now I can run books on 2 different companies, all these employees. Yeah, it got under my skin deep.
Yeah.
Hardcore entrepreneur. Um, so
There was probably a lot of control there for you. Like in it was like what you could control.
so true. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yes. So, that said, fast forward many years later, I always coincidentally to being an entrepreneur, I've always been this sort of person who's like really into spirituality. So I
Yeah.
think maybe it lends itself to me being a Pisces. We're like kind of like the most probably woo woo of the
Mhm.
astrological signs. And I at like I don't know, 23, probably when my middle son was born, I was like, I want to do spiritual work. I mean, this was like in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
I don't even think anybody other than I don't know if anybody did spiritual work.
Yeah.
They had to be like book writers or something. All the while I'm reading like fervently any books I can get my hands on about just like spiritual thoughts and ideas and um because I was raised so religiously, it was just like embedded in the fabric of who I was as a person
Yes, to
to
seek.
yes, to seek, to question, to wonder, and also I outgrew the answers that were presented to me by the
Mm.
church.
Did you at some point actively leave that church or that religion?
Yeah, so I think that kind of happened. It wasn't more of an active thing. There was a lot of moving, so I lost
Yeah,
connection
to the community.
to the community. And also, I'm glad you brought this up. When I was at boarding school, the church outed my mom and Lisa and
Oh.
basically said, "You need to stop this or you need to not come here.
Okay.
And that my mom and her rightfully had a really hard time taking,
For sure.
because they were both really involved in the church and they didn't see the issues that the church saw with them
Yeah.
having
That's
this
sad.
relationship with each other
Mhm.
and how it didn't work.
Yep.
So that was really hard for me, and I kept trying to make it work. It's like, you know, a bad relationship. You just
Yeah.
keep trying to make it work and you keep going back and you're like, this just doesn't fit. This just doesn't align anymore. It just doesn't feel right.
Yep.
So probably by the time, because I remember taking my oldest son to church a couple of times and it just didn't feel right to me. So probably by the time I was in my early 20s, I had done some more work and read some more, and um I just really knew I needed more answers than the church had given me answers to.
I love the way you phrased that. Like the seeking of more answers. I think people get so stuck in the dogma of like their religion and stop there, but you knew there was
Right.
more.
Yeah, I think that for me, when you grow and change and evolve, um, and if it doesn't work for me, then I need to find the thing that's gonna work for me. Um, because outgrown it, right? Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't outgrow shoes and expect to still wear the same shoes. My feet would hurt.
Yeah. Right. Good. That's a good reference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just outgrew the thing.
Yep.
The confines of it were smaller than the confines of my life. And so I needed to find answers. And so I was fervently reading books and trying to understand. I also had some personal experiences where I had memories about being being a person here on earth before this person. So
Okay.
I started believing and reading and understanding about reincarnation. And so all this while I'm growing this business, I'm fervently reading about spirituality. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to do spiritual work, but I have no idea how I'm going to do spiritual work.
Yeah.
But kind of like around year 5, 7, I was like, okay, here's the deal. At this point, I'm kind of going to stay in this business until my kids graduate from high school,
Okay.
and I'm going to sell this business. I kind of took just a stamp and I was like, I'm doing this and I'm going to do spiritual work. This is what I always want to do. And I felt like it was really important for me to build a business and support my kids and help support the family and make as much money as I could. But at the end of the day, I knew I needed to do what I needed to do for
Yeah.
work, because it's kind of like the thing that fulfilled me. It's my passion.
Yeah.
So while I'm building the cleaning business and I had those health clubs and, learning all about balance as an entrepreneur, having employees, all of that sort of stuff, I was learning about spirituality, meditating, just through being my own guinea pig.
Okay.
So, since I had made this proclamation, as time went on, and my oldest son, uh, graduated, left the house, eventually went into the Air Force. Huge shift and transition. I hadn't been away from him for so long. He deployed, all of these things. Then as my middle son was getting older, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting really close to being to the point where I can say they're going to be graduated. I can do
Yeah.
spiritual work.
It was
It's
coming
coming up.
soon.
Yep, it's coming up. So I start like thinking about selling the business and how could I do this? Well, we had identified at one point in time a buyer for the business, and I had asked them like, how would I it was a national contractor that we had known, and how could I get as much as I wanted for the business? So I grew and grew and grew the business. When I sold the business 14 or 15 years later after starting it, I had 46 employees. And I had just purposefully, mindfully just grown it and really killed it on sales so that I could
Sell it.
sell it and get the dollar amount that I needed, that I felt it was worth, to
Yep.
make it worth the while to sell it. Otherwise, just keep it.
Right.
Right. But I was also very excited, like, oh my gosh, I get to do spiritual work. So that said, sold it, but I had a 1-year earnout. In order to get more money, they said, if you stay on for a year and we hold the numbers, we'll give you X more dollars. And I'm like, I'll
Let me
take
get
that.
that too.
I'll take that, please.
Yeah.
Yes. So I decided to stay on. And so during that time that I decided to stay on for another year, shortly thereafter, my husband lost his job.
Oh dear.
Yes. And there was a lot of fallout. And I mean, he was president of a real estate firm, so it was a big loss.
Yep.
Hit to our bottom, like, money to
Yep.
pay bills.
Yep.
My youngest son had decided to go to boarding school for his senior year of high school because he was struggling with local high school. So he went to the boarding school we went to, and that is not it's not cheap to send your kids to boarding school.
Yep.
So I was at that point the sole breadwinner, having just sold my business, having now, okay, not only do I need to do this earnout, but now I actually need to make money.
Yeah.
I need to make money. So worked really, really hard. My youngest son had some issues. And because of that, we had done some energy work. One of my
Oh.
friends had done some energy work on him. And that helped him to make the decision to go to boarding school because he's like, I need to break up with my friends. They're not a good influence. I need to move away. And after seeing that, I was like, I need to learn how to do this energy work thing.
Yeah.
My friend at the time was like, I will teach you, blah, blah, blah. And so I started doing energy work part-time as just kind of a way to get my foot in the door of spirituality.
Yeah.
While I was working through this earnout, buyout situation for a year longer, and also being the main breadwinner in my family.
No pressure.
No pressure. Right. But that said, I ended up making my sales quotas. My ex-husband started a real estate firm instead of like going to work for someone else, ended up starting our own real estate firm and took the money from selling my business and invested it into some properties we purchased. And that said, finally, after the business had grown large enough that we had started this real estate firm, I was so over working all the time because I was doing the books for him and some work for him, for us, I guess, at the real estate firm. I was still working full time for the business that I had sold my company to, and then I was doing energy
Oh my
on
goodness.
like Saturdays.
The hustle.
Yes. And I was like, this is kind of a lot. And so I decided to quit eventually the business, the cleaning business that I had sold to, and I was going to finally do the thing and work full time doing spiritual work. I had no idea what that was going to look like. And my ex-husband really encouraged me to do that. He's like, you don't even need to work. You could work doing energy for people, just this is like too much. So anyways, ended up leaving that company, great company, learned so much about sales, and so fortunate that they not only bought my company, but just great relationships. That said, took a month off and just kind of like for one of the first times in my life, didn't work that hard for a month. But then my ex-husband asked me to start coming into the office and help him manage people, projects, little things here and there. Sure, but I'll do this part-time, but I'm going to do spiritual work. Part-time rolled into full-time, rolled into building another business, large business, with a lot of holdings, assets, not what I wanted to do. And it was very difficult. Knowing what I wanted to do, I went and got my real estate license, became a commercial real estate person so I could lease space, sell buildings, buy buildings, whatever. But all the while I was still working, doing energy for people part-time. So I was working again quite a bit. I ran our finance division and our property management division. I kind of like built from the ground up. Because my goal was, okay, okay, fine. I'll help you. I'm going to get this thing settled. I'm going to get this thing so it like can run itself
Yeah.
because I knew how to start and run businesses. And then I'm going to finally do the thing.
It's
I'm going
gonna
to,
happen.
it's,
Finally gonna happen.
it's gotta happen. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, this is the dream since I was really young. So that said, my middle son in there ended up having a mental health crisis. That shifted and changed the trajectory of my life unlike nothing else other than maybe my parents' divorce. And so because of that, it kind of like broke the path of
Yeah.
the way things were supposed to go. We were building and building and building this business together, even though I was kind of like hesitant because it's
Want
not
to
what
do
I wanted
something
to
else.
do, right? But I knew it was for our family. And to hold up, wait, that doesn't matter.
Nothing else
That
matters.
nothing else matters. We need to focus on this. So it took a good year to get him so that he was stable. And I give so much props to people who suffer from mental illness because it's a game changer and it's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that was challenging. All the while still trying to work and run these divisions with our company. Um, I struggled with, doing energy work for people just because time capacity. I had to live outside of the state for a month. And so it was just a really crazy time when I look back at that time in my life. It was just challenge. Challenge. My youngest son moved away. Yeah, it was nuts. So got him stable, and was in the business. And rightfully so, my ex-husband and I just started having challenges.
Yeah. You were dealing with a lot.
Dealing with a lot. And then my thing was throwing myself into helping my son recover and heal. And his thing was throwing himself into work
Yeah.
as a way to, I suppose, provide for the family, but also I think that was how he was dealing.
Coping.
Yes. We hired more people, we bought more buildings. And during that time, we just started having conflict between us. And he asked me multiple times to not be involved in the business anymore because it was just challenging for both
Yeah.
of us. And so in the end, I decided, okay, I don't think the business is ready, the real estate firm, but it probably never is going to be. And I've got to do the thing. And after my son's um, incident, it shifted me inside. It was like, fuck it.
I'm not gonna wait anymore.
Yeah,
Enough waiting.
right.
Yeah.
Enough helping. Like I've got to do this thing. And this more than any other time in my life is really, it's at my doorstep.
You need this.
Right.
Yeah.
People need this.
People need this.
Yes. So I hired I hired two different coaches. Sarah Seidelman was one of them. She is an amazing life coach and does shamanic work. And also Megan Sylvester. She is also a spiritual coach, and I went to a retreat of hers and I experienced her retreat, and I was like, whatever you're doing, I want to do it in the north.
This is it.
Right.
Yes.
Like I'm going to be you.
Yes.
Up north, because she was living in Texas at the time. And so that said, I just started like carefully crafting what I wanted to do, how I could do spiritual work, how I could use my gifts. I became sound certified, bought sound equipment, so I do sound classes,
Sound bowls.
sound bowls.
healing.
Yep,
Okay.
and I have a gong, and yep. So I have a whole class. I over a period of 10 months, I became a Kundalini yoga teacher. Never wanted to be a yoga teacher. But then I tried Kundalini yoga and I was like, this is the thing. It's just transformative. It's beautiful. It's a tool to help people at challenging times, which it did for me.
Yes.
It's a powerful tool. I still was doing energy work for people. And then I became a life coach, certified life coach. And that's really, for me, my main source of helping people is through life coaching. And I use spirituality as a twist. So I'm getting all of these certifications, working very minimally in our real estate firm, um, part-time, and trying to just build kind of like my business.
Sure.
And my ex-husband and I are struggling. It's gotten very bad. We had been going to counseling for 6 months, like once a week. So like it's not
You were
like we
working
weren't
on it.
trying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, on his end, another person entered the picture. Um, and he ended up starting a relationship with this other person who worked for us, who actually worked for me. And I didn't know this. And it it was no surprise we were having so many problems because he was involved. There was another person in the picture
Yeah.
that only one of us knew about.
Yeah.
And so the marriage just declined until I found out about their relationship, which I had suspected and asked and was lied to about. And enter the time that you and I were together at a mastermind finding out about COVID.
Yes.
2 weeks later, I found out about him being in a relationship with someone else. And
What a time that
it was
was.
nuts, right? Going through
Yeah.
COVID and going through all that stuff.
The same time.
Mm-hmm.
Total life shift.
Yes, major life event. So here I am coming out of like just my son's thing and then going into this and then going into COVID. It was a lot. Again, I've had these really big incidences and times in my life where it's a lot,
Yeah.
and then I feel
But
like,
nobody handles a lot better than you.
well, I don't
I mean,
know.
you have the experience in doing it for better, for worse, but you handle it like a boss.
Yeah, well, I just think I have a survivor's mentality, you know?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's so beautiful to hear you telling this story, to have known you through living through parts of it. I got to know you when you were involved in the real estate business, and like seeing now how your path has unfolded, and like what, like looking backwards. Do you look back and think like some of these things make more sense over time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I still in some instances struggle with wrapping my heads around the whys of some
Sure. Of
things.
course.
Because there just is like life is just unfair,
Sure.
you know?
Inherently.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's really no why to it. But that said, through the divorce, through COVID, building a business during the divorce, during
Because
COVID.
now you have to go forward alone.
Oh, yes.
You got to figure this out.
Yes. Yes. So I've got to figure it out. I've got to be able to support myself. I've got to be able to figure out like how I'm going to manage like this new business on top of being divorced, and I hadn't been single since I was 16 years
Oh my
old.
God, thinking about it that way. Wow.
Yeah. So it was the thing. And I really I consider myself lucky and blessed that I was simultaneously in my yoga training. It was a huge foundation and huge comfort for me while going through mediations during COVID. My ex husband's sister passed away from COVID.
That's right.
That was really challenging. So many challenges in there, right? That said, so lucky, so blessed to have such a spiritual foundation and to be building those practices and being able to use them in real time. So if you come to me and be like, what's the thing to help me with this? I'm like, I'll say I know. And it's like, not I know. It's like, I know.
Tried and true.
Because I'm the guinea pig. I did the
Yes.
thing at the worst possible time to not crack, to not survive. I did the thing. So if I know, I'm saying I know. And because those were the things that kept me grounded, that kept me stable, that kept me from, just kind of going off the rails when your life is imploding. Yeah.
And you never did.
Yeah, well, there were some days where
There were days, but
I
all
was messy
told,
crying. Yeah.
you kept that compass pointed towards what you wanted to do, and you didn't let it steer off course after that.
Thank you for saying that. And
Yeah.
I have to say, like, if not now, when I wanted to do my spiritual work,
Yep.
there's nothing holding me back.
Nothing.
Right. There's no one else that I need to fix, no companies. I just, this is the thing. So that's kind of how I landed here. And,
Yeah.
luckily you and I had met in that mastermind all those years ago. And this fits so nicely into my business side that I have
Yep.
such a long catalog and years of experience. I'm still able to use that and assist other business women and leaders using just my wisdom from my life
Yes.
experience. So I love the mastermind concept that, and even just talking about this sort of stuff, it just gets me like worked up. I love it so much. Yeah.
And I think it's so important that you shared your story today, because people listening and that have listened to other episodes and will continue to listen, like, this explains why you sit in a seat of being able to share about many of these topics, is what you've lived through,
Right.
like the complexities of your life lived. And everybody has a complex life, absolutely. But what makes you you is so clear in hearing your stories. And I think
Ah,
people need to share their stories more.
agreed.
It all makes so much more sense when you say it out loud and share it. And I hope that people have enjoyed listening to this and learning more about you, and the phoenix you are rising in your spiritual work. And I'm so grateful you introduced me to what you do in the spiritual realm,
Right.
and like practices, things I didn't even know were in existence and I've taken into my life, and gotten such great, I don't know, just experiences out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
people are lucky to have you guiding them both spiritually and through the mediums that you've used. I feel like you have such a toolkit.
Yes. Yeah.
Those sound bowls, I got to carry the gong once. Like, that whole situation is pure magic.
Yeah.
Like, to get to attend a sound class the Monique puts on is
Aw.
otherworldly experience, and people
Aw.
should go to that locally here. And you also have your Kundalini online platform. Now you're learning
Yes.
the world of online platforms. Just
Yes.
kind of close us out today with like talking about, where are you right now? What are all the ways that people can experience you?
Yes. So people can work with me in several different ways. I do have the online, so you don't have to be in Duluth, Minnesota. For coaching, I have Zoom, so we meet.
Yeah, so
meet my
nice.
clients to Zoom. But I do have the online on-demand yoga platform. So I've been recording classes, uploading them so people can just take them from their home when it works for them. So that's on my website. Sound classes I do locally here in the region that we live in. Coaching can be done online. I do have a couple of courses out of my experience of going through heartbreak. I created a course called Heartbreak to Hope that helps guide people through 6 weeks from a real position of what the hell to maybe I could have hope again for love. And then, yeah, I know it's beautiful. And then I have another course launching soon called The Gentle Path, how to just kind of like, a lot of us are sensitive and we just put up guards all the time.
Right.
And how to live a kind of like a guard reduced or guard free life and be okay being sensitive. So that's just a 4-week course. But yeah, my website, my name, Monique Forcier, is how you find me and work with me, and you can reach out. Social medias, my name as well.
You're killing it over there too.
Oh, posting
Absolutely.
every day
Yes.
is a thing.
Yes, you can learn so much from just watching Monique's social media. And I'm just so lucky to get to podcast with you,
Aw.
facilitate this podcast and our mastermind groups, and do all the other fun things that we enjoy together, traveling and shopping, and pretty much doesn't matter what it is, we're having a good time.
That's
And
true.
connecting on a deeper level, spiritually and business.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
oh, this has been great. Thank you, Monique, for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, friends. You've just finished another episode of the Heart and Soul podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the show, and if you've loved it, we would love if you'd leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. You can find links to leave that review in the show notes, where you'll also find other resources that we reference on our show. And if you think a friend could find value in today's episode or any future episodes, please share this episode with them on social media. This is one of the only ways the podcast can organically grow, and we just can't wait to connect with you and all of your besties. You can also find Monique and I on our many social media platforms or our websites, and we're going to leave links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing our hearts and souls with you again next time. With heart, I'm Mariah.
And with soul, I'm Monique.